All right, so good afternoon, everybody. My name is Marianne Sletsjø, and I work at the Norwegian Agricultural Advisory Service, or Norsk Landbruksrådgivning Region Østafjells. We are one of the 7 partners in the Interreg North Sea Carbon Farming Project. And I'm very happy today to introduce to you the webinar on carbon farming and regenerative farming developments in Norway. Regenerative farming is not a method, but a result of measures taken based on a holistic approach. Sequestering carbon in the soil is of vital importance to improve soil health and ecosystem processes. Holistic management is a key tool for decision-making in regenerative farming, taking into account the people, the nature, and the economy on each farm. So, you have chosen to change the management on your farm, and thus you would like to measure the outcome of your efforts. In regenerative farming, this is done by using the ecological outcome verification tool, or index. The ecological outcome verification index uses 15 indicators to verify the status of your ecosystem, the farm, in which carbon sequestration is a parameter in the long-term monitoring program. And so with me today, I have 2 speakers with long experience within regenerative farming. And first, I would like to introduce Anders Lerberg Kopstad. Anders has for the last 8 years facilitated the transition to regenerative agriculture across farms in Norway, Sweden, Denmark, and Estonia. He is a certified field professional in regenerative agriculture and holistic management, and the main teacher of holistic management in the Nordic region. Anders has also been part of research projects concerning soil carbon and grassland ecosystem health, and holds a master in agroecology specializing in regenerative grazing. And last but not least, he's running a farm with his wife, and that is one of the first regenerative farms in Scandinavia since 2011. So then, Anders, I give the word over to you.
Thank you very much, Marianne. It's an honor to be invited to speak in this context of the interregional carbon farming project. Projects like these are of immense importance to figure out how we are going to deal with the future of food production in a changing climate. So we have our experiences, and we've been working with this, as mentioned, for a while now, and we believe that this is one of the best ways in order to encompass all the needs that are important to take care of as we are lifting ourselves out of the existing paradigm and into a new, where we can work with nature and produce food and fiber in a way that rebuilds the ecosystem. So I will share with you some thoughts and some slides here today. Let's see. I hope you can see the screen now. If anyone cares to give me a sign if they can see.
We can see the screen, Anders. Fine.
Oh, that's perfect. So, well, no more introduction needed. Thank you, Marianne, for that introduction. It is right, I've been working with regenerative agriculture for quite some time now, and it is of great joy to see how this, what used to be a very small niche of people, now is expanding into global awareness, and also seeing that there are mutual benefit efforts that are arranged by both the European Union and also from the food sector, the industry, and also from farmer initiatives all around the world. So, but we are now going into the use of a new word, regenerative, and we also need to know what does regenerative really mean. And I like to start my lectures with this old Native American proverb that says, if you don't move with nature, nature will move you. And understanding this and learning from this will serve of great benefit to us when we are dealing with all the mishaps that we are seeing around the world today, where our way of meeting the environment and our way of dealing and managing goes against the movements of nature. So regenerative, it is hopefully more than just a new word that we can put on our wrappings and greenwash our way through with the same business as usual procedure. So what does regenerative really mean in the basic? Let's see. When you boil it down, there are sort of three branches of regeneration, or in the same development phase where regeneration occurs. So in one end, you have degradation. That means that something is being torn down. We are mining the resources. Things are eroding, withering, and it's a chronic process. So in the middle, you have what we call conservation. That is just keeping things as they are, sustaining it. It stops any development, like conserving food. You stop the biological breakdown. But if the ecosystem is not healthy, you don't want to conserve that. You have to regenerate that. That means that we have to stimulate and strengthen the innate capacity to produce. So today we have been, well, not today, but for the past 10,000 years, farming systems have been basically the same. We have had an input and an output strategy where we till the soils, we sow our seeds, and we harvest at the end of the season, and then we till the soils again to have them ready for next year's crop. But there are some challenges with that. And that is, for once, that we lose a lot of carbon. All the water evaporates. We have bare soil that erodes. It requires a lot of energy, and today it requires a lot of fossil energy. We are mining nutrients. We have low species diversity. Where we have increased risk of fires and of diseases, and we need irrigation to maintain the system. And all of these things are diminishing our capacity to produce in the future. And on top of that, we have only a very, very short period of time through the year where we actually have active photosynthesis, where the sun hits green growing plants that can grow and both builds carbon and sugars into the soil, and also a very short time to create energy for us to consume and for other in the whole trophic pyramid to consume. So this way of farming has been and is still the main system of how we are presenting farming. And in, let's see, in my backyard, this is how it looks like. So you can see the white brown area is a grain field that has been newly plowed and seeded, and it's all ready for sprouting. But at the same time, on the outside of the fields, you have green lush vegetation already producing. There's, by the way, my sheep are grazing down in the corner. So what happens in a system like this? Well, this is what produces the grains, the soy, the feed for animals, the feed for human beings. Let's see. Then the farmers are waiting for rain. And after weeks of drought, then this rain comes, and it comes for a week, and it rains and it rains and it rains. And then what used to be this really nice river where we go swimming turns into this. That's not chocolate. That's our soils. That's the nutrients. That's all the minerals, all the soluble nutrients, the nitrogen, the phosphorus, the chemicals, everything goes out into the river basins. This river takes 12 hours to change all the water in its flow. So it means that this river would be clean in 12 hours if we started putting the right efforts to it. But then you need to do something with the soil. So regenerative agriculture is not a farming method. it's something that we are going to go into now, because we are a species that are very focused on methods. But when it comes to farming, there is no one size fits all. And when we're going to tackle future challenges, we need to meet it in a very different way. And that means that all the actors in any farming system, they have to work with their resources under their conditions to make agriculture regenerative. So it's more like a joint venture, including all under common premise of what regenerating means. The beginning is to start to move away from input-output mentality and into intention and outcome mentality. And then we have to understand what is the intention of a regenerative agriculture. Well, the land and the people have to become healthier, and the land has to be more productive by us farming it. So it's not a method, but it's an outcome. And we usually put it in a different way to describe it. And we usually say that regenerative agriculture enables the highest imaginable vitality in the ecosystems while serving human needs. And if you think about the previous slide with degradation, conservation, and regeneration, we need to use our imagination to figure out how must this ecosystem look like in order for it to function properly and to maintain life for as long as needed. But how are we going to do that? Well, if it's not going to be by methods, then we need to look at something else. We need to look at principles and processes. And we also need to change how we make decisions. So globally, regenerative agriculture is now being viewed as a new direction for agriculture. And there are 6 core principles that are the main principles that most people can support. And this one is from General Mills, a big food producing corporation. And they say that the 6 core principles for regenerative agriculture is understanding the context of your farm operation, minimizing soil disturbance, maximizing diversity, keeping the soil covered, maintaining a living root year-round in the soil and underground, and integrating livestock. So these are very important principles, but I want to take you even further behind the principles, because as mentioned in the beginning here, you have to understand the context of the farm operation, and that's where we begin. So understanding the context means that we have to change our perspective. So if you want to make small changes, you change how you do things. But if you want to make big changes, you change how you see things. So this change in perspective, that means that we have to go from the mechanistic worldview that has been functioning very well in our mechanistic production focused world. When we are building cars, when we're building computers, we need a linear, reductionist, hierarchic systems, static, mechanistic thinking. And this is representing what they call the complicated world, the complicated systems. But that doesn't apply when we are working with complex systems, living systems. Then we need to change our approach, our perspective, to a dynamic, holistic, distributed, process-oriented, interchangeable living perspective. But that's not too easy. So we need some help. And the way we work is that we use a framework that can handle complexity, that are defining intentions and defining outcomes, that integrates the financial, social structures and the ecosystem into planning procedures. And they are all at the decision-making level, because nothing happens until we make a decision. And we need to make decisions that are handling complexity. So that is the framework for holistic management that we are using when we are working with farmers all over the world. But understanding how to make decisions isn't enough. We have to know that it's taking us in the right direction. So that's where we have the environmental outcome verification, which comes in at the result level. And Ulf is going to introduce this to you. where we look at the measurement of ecosystem health and ecoregion specific monitoring, and also that farmers are involved in doing the monitoring. So the holistic management framework is a, let's see if I can zoom in here. It's a process for farmers and land managers to make decisions that will lift and enhance their quality of life and their future resources, the landscape they are living of, and building awareness into the process of decision making. So hopefully it's possible for you to see some of the writing on this slide. So it starts on in the top where it says whole under management. So the farmers, they have to know who are the decision makers. That's usually not too obvious on many farms, especially if you have the parent generation or previous owners living next by. They can affect the decisions quite severely. But you have to know who are the decision makers in order for them to make the right decisions based on what they have as their resource base. What kind of landscape traits, what kind of infrastructure, what kind of skills, and also what kind of money they have. When they are aware that we are the decision makers and we have control over this resource base, they have to understand what is our decisions going to lead to. What is quality of life to us? So they have to understand what brings their decisions into a place where they can feel that they are safe, secure, they're healthy, and are surrounded by nice people. And they also have to understand how must the future resource base look like. How must the landscape look like, and how must the people that we are reliant on, how do we have to behave in order to have support from these people? So we are taking the other approach, not to just being stewards of the land, but we are also deciding how does the landscape need to look like. And in order for this to function, we also need to understand how the landscape functions. And that brings us, let's see, into the next slide, where I'm highlighting the ecosystem processes. So when you're working with nature, you need to understand how the processes function in order for you to use the right tools to lift them in the right direction. So I'm going to talk very quickly about the ecosystem processes. So the planet is one planet, and the planet has one ecosystem. Regardless where you are on the planet, it's the same for ecosystem processes that are working. We are teaching farmers how to understand how these processes are functioning on their farm and what they can do to lift them and enhance them in order to stay in future production. This means that we have to make the most out of the water that comes to our lands and make it infiltrate, keeping the soil covered. We have to maximize the effectivity of the photosynthesis, keeping as much leaf surface as possible for the longest possible time over the largest amount of area. We need to make sure that the mineral cycling, the micro life in the soil, take care of all the nutrients and makes them plant available again. And we need to make sure that we have enough species diversity in order for balancing out both droughts and pests and all kinds of things that are happening through a season. Ecosystem functioning is something that is quite obvious out of balance when you are traveling through the landscape. And what we do is we go into any ecosystem and we ask, how must this function? How must this ecosystem function in order for us to produce and live safely? And then we have to look at the nutrient turnover. How do we want it to go faster, or do we need it to go slower? Do we want more or less solar energy into the system? Do we need more or less diversity? Do we need more or less water infiltration? So we go through all of these in the different places we are in order to see what kind of actions will in the best way lift these ecosystem processes. And that means that we have to understand what actions are possible, and we need to understand what kind of tools we have for our disposal to work with the ecosystem processes. And we have a variety of tools: creativity, technology, fire, rest, living organisms, and money and labor. All of these are basically the only tools that we have for our disposal to have an impact on the ecosystems. And I'm going to focus on one tool now, just briefly, because it's one of the tools that are often not recognized as a tool, but it's a very important tool. And that is the grazing animals in the landscape. So grazing animals are usually very vilified when it comes to climate and carbon, but it always depends on how the grazing animals are integrated in the landscape. They have a 40 million year history on this planet, being a key species in regulating ecosystem biomass and keeping ecosystem processes functioning. And what is really important to understand is that all life is dependent on a cycling of growth, death, and decay. Birth, growth, death, and decay. And in some parts of the world, the cold regions and the dry regions, when it's cold, all biological breakdown stops. And when it's dry, all biological breakdown stops. But within the rumen of the ruminants, you still have this process going on, even though it's cold or even though it's dry. So we need in all ecosystems to address all tools available, also ruminants, in order to facilitate this biological breakdown cycle that we need in order to maintain life in the system. But that means that they have to be working in sync with nature in ways that will lift and enhance the ecosystems. And if we don't do that, we have severe problems, because 2/3 of the planet's surface is today desertifying, and it can only sustain human livelihoods by grazing. So we need to make sure that when we are using animals as a tool, it's done in a way that lifts and enhances the ecosystem and not degrading it by overgrazing. And that means that we have to monitor at the soil level and from the ground up. And this is what Ulf is going to speak to you about now. I'm going to finish off by saying life is carbon, but carbon in itself is dead. So that's why we take the perspective of life in our work. And hopefully this has been a very fast but small eye-opening view into the perspectives of why regenerative agriculture is a way to move into the future for our farming and food systems. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Anders. And you might have more time later to elaborate a bit more on any of the issues that you have presented. As there are no questions in the chat, I would just like to pose one question before I hand over the word to Ulf, and that is: Regenerative Norway has chosen to include both organic and conventional farmers in the regenerative program. Can you tell us something about the reason for that?
Sure. So regeneration is something that is of vital importance now. We need to regenerate ecosystems all around the world. And that means that farmers, they are the main managers of the world's land surfaces. So farmers need to start where they are. They cannot go through major transitions. They are both financially bound, and they are also socially bound in the way that they are working. So we need to make the smallest possible steps in order for them to do things a little bit better. So that means that we have to work with all kinds of farmers in order to make this development happen. So you take where you are, and then you see, how can I lift these processes in order for them to serve the whole business and my life and our future in the best possible way. So we are not discriminating on the tools that are used and the methods that are used, because we don't have one answer. There is not one answer, but we need to maintain focus on the processes and the outcome. So that is why we think it's important that all farmers are joining in on this effort of regeneration. And I can honestly not think of any farmer who doesn't want to build back their farms in a good way. And this is also one of the old Norwegian proverbs, that a farm is something that you inherit from your from the generation that comes after you. And we also say that what do we say, Ulf? You always leave the farm in a better condition than when you inherited it. So that's the basic premise of regeneration. And I have not met one farmer that cannot agree with that. But then that means that we have to measure the outcomes and see that our actions are actually leading us there, so we are not fooling ourselves.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right, then I am going to introduce the next speaker, and we have with us today Ulf Ullring also, who is going to tell us about the environmental outcome index. I use ecological outcome verification index, and then I also see environmental outcome verification index. I guess you use both, Ulf.
No.
No?
It's ecological outcomes
It is.
verification. But there is an index called the Ecological Health Index.
All
so
right.
I'm shortly going to talk about that.
Okay, I will tell you a little bit on the background on you first, because I was just curious about the if whether you use environmental or ecological, but you use ecological. And then Ulf pioneered regenerative agriculture with holistic management in the Nordic countries. First, from 2002 as a farmer in Norway with old breed sheep and outfield mountain grazing. Later, Ulf worked as an instructor and mentor, and from 2010 with the Savory Institute. He co-started the Nordic Savory Hub with Jørgen Andersson from Sweden. From 2016, he helped develop the Ecological Outcomes Verification Protocol of the Savory Institute as a member of the Master Verifier Group. And today he oversees the implementation of the EOV, which is short for the Ecological Outcome Verification, in Norway and Sweden. As a professional biologist, he has specialized in plant biology, cultural landscape, and animal impact. Okay, I give the word to you then, Ulf.
Thank you. Can you see my screen now?
Yep, I can see your screen.
You can see my first slide?
I can.
Okay, thank you very much. And also thank you to Anders for a perfect introduction to what I'm talking about. And it's a pleasure to be here and to be able to present Savory's ecological outcomes verification to you all. And for short, I will call it EOV. It's all about regeneration, as Anders just told you. It's not only the soil carbon, but it's the land itself. Carbon is not only sequestered in the soil, but it's sequestered in the entire biosphere. All living things are carbon. So when sequestering carbon, the carbon is sequestered not only in the soil, but in the plants and in the animals upon the soil. So sustainable is not enough. What is degraded must be regenerated. And regeneration is not a method. It is both a process and a result. And it therefore can be measured. So that's what we do with the EOV. We measure the health of the land as a living system. We measure the soil health, we measure biodiversity, and we measure the ecosystem function. So why do this? We believe it is necessary to install a culture of regeneration throughout a cycle of practice and demand. And that does apply to every farmer that wants to regenerate land, whether he or she is within the eco-organic movement or the conventional farming community. So regenerative farms typically practice some kind of adaptive management, and with monitoring of important indicators of land health, and thus regeneration could be measured. From this, it should be possible to create a market demand for regeneration. That's the idea, and it was pioneered in Patagonia for 10 years, and then through Savory Institute being raised up to the global level, and we call it the land to market, where farmers partner up with brands and retailers to develop a market for regeneration through products from regenerating land worldwide. Here's the situation now for the land to market and EOV worldwide. It starts really to kick off. To do this, we need to verify that regeneration really are taking place. And we can do that because regeneration can be measured. So we developed the EOV to that end. We have so far started with grasslands, mixed farming and orchards. So crop fields and gardens are not yet scored in this manner, but probably will soon. I will now tell you how we do that. First, the protocol is outcome-based. It's not methods that are evaluated, only the results. Second, it is contextually relevant to local environmental conditions. And third, but highly important, it's the farmer first. It must be of high value for the single farmer. So in the protocol for EOV, we are following two types of indicators. First, the leading indicators that are fast variables that are following from that we follow from year to year, which are scored as an ecological health index. And we have the lagging indicators that are slow variables like soil development that is measured every 5 years only. On the farm, it looked like this. A baseline measurement is done on one or more permanent plots in year 1. Then it is repeated every 5 years. But everywhere we do an assessment of leading indicators in which we call then short-term monitoring. And auditing can be done any year after the first. The long-term monitoring is done by specialists, accredited, so-called accredited monitors, through the Savory hubs. The short-term monitoring can be done by the farmer when he or she is trained for it. The annual assessment is giving valuable feedback for the farm management as well. In the annual assessments, we scored so-called ecological health index. It gives a snapshot of pointers to the immediate situation on the land. And also, we use also ecological health index in the long-term monitoring and as well in the auditing, which quality assurance is it's auditing of the lab, which are part of the program. The index is built up of up to 15 indicators of 4 ecosystem processes that are scored, and the total of the indicators are what we call the ecological health index. Not all of the indicators are used for every single situation. We'll soon see how that is. Some indicators are absolute, like erosion. Others are relative to the ecoregion, like bare ground, biomass, and species. And the indicators are scored from minus to plus relative to their importance, and added to give a total index score. The scoring is visual, and the focus is on the soil surface, and it looks much like this. Typically, we use about 10 minutes to score. We do a minimum of 10 scoring on the land base. In 2019, there was an article, a published article that evaluates this method. So you can delve into it in more detail here. As I said, the evaluation matrix is adjusted for the prevailing environmental conditions of the ecoregions you live in, like climate, brittleness, etc. And for each ecoregion and each relevant state, a reference is described. Here the state is a meadow. The reference needs to be as close to the potential of the state and the ecoregion as possible. And scoring gives then an index on a continuum from minus to plus, from degenerative to regenerative, from minus 140 up to plus 120. Then it is a threshold for when it's called regenerative. Here is an example from Patagonia and in the very south of South America, and from the mountains of Norway, and another from the inland valleys of Sweden and Norway. All fields or paddocks are scored individually, and a scoring report can look like this. And here in this report you can see that one paddock in yellow is highlighted in yellow. That means that it's below the threshold to be regenerative. In this ecoregion, the threshold is plus 30. We also see that the weighted average for this farm is 75, so it's considered regenerative overall. And from this report, the farmer can take feedback to his management and see which ecosystem processes and which paddocks he should focus on. So from that farm, the average paddock will look something like this. For the baseline and the long-term monitoring, we do permanent plots. They look like this one, and is established at least one on each land base, sometimes more. First, photographs are taken. Here an overview and also down. Then along the transects T1 and T2, 200 line point measures are taken, and added to this are cover and frequency of all additional species inside the gray area. Then at the plot, also soil measurements are taken. Here we see infiltration test, and also a soil profile is dug and evaluated. Soil tests are then taken throughout the farm, if not already taken, and will be analyzed for soil carbon. Where it is available, also Haney tests or the Cornell cache tests are done for the evaluation of soil health. The results are then analyzed and reported like this, and saved for quality assurance and research. And for the last, we have partnered with Michigan State University in this respect. So this was just a quick overview. So to go more into detail, you can go to this page on savory.global and download more information about the EOV. And you can also contact me or other Savory hubs, of course. So with this, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ulf. Thank you, both of you, for very informative and interesting presentations. I have a couple of questions for you, and I guess it goes to both of you. The first one is, can you say something about the interest for holistic management and ecological outcome verification in the Nordic countries?
Absolutely. You start, Anders.
Yes, all right. Well, it's this is a very interesting process, as everything in nature usually grows in a sigmoid curve. So we have been through a long period of very slow growth, and now suddenly the interest for regenerative agriculture and holistic management are taking off. So we have a very good collaboration with the Norwegian Agricultural Extension Service, and giving trainings all across Norway, and to farmers and also organizations, and also farmers themselves that are initiating trainings in their local community, and working to establish a local network of farmers that can collaborate and build their understanding and awareness of working with the ecosystem processes, and integrating their life into their work. So yeah, it's we've been working with both Sweden and for the last well, it's basically 10 years now, Ulf, isn't it? So and for the last year, it's been a very growing interest in Norway. So we are very happy to see this development.
And for EOV, I can say the same. I have been doing courses in Sweden and also in Norway, and also talked about EOV on meetings and so on, and the interest is really high. I can say there's a demand for more courses and more information on this, and farmers that have participated in the courses are really excited about it, because they see it's, especially with the annual scoring, what we call the short-term monitoring, we see that they have so much, it gives so much information immediately to inform the farm management. So farmers are really, it's an eye-opener for the farm manager.
Thank you. And I have another question which goes more or less in the same direction. You know, we the Carbon Farming Project made a film, and in this film there is a short, or not so short, but the start is from Tore Jardar Virgenes and his farm. And can you tell us, you know, both what would you see as the most prominent benefits for Tore Jardar to use regenerative farming or your tools?
Well, the first benefit is the whole mindset, the change of mindset in regards to how he works his farm. So when he was starting, he had a very complicated growing system with lots of interchangeable growing, and learning how we can work with processes. We could rearrange the whole farm into a way that created a lot more flow and a lot more time and space for him to develop the things that really matter to him. So it's been an amazing journey to follow him from the beginning and see how all of these principles can be put to life with someone who has such a burning passion for making food and the whole ecosystem into a place for a whole community. So yeah.
And to that, I can add that using the EOV on his place, because he's taking part in the EOV program, then he could see which of the ecosystem processes that were the weak link in his management. He has some problematic soils close to the river, and it shows up well in when we do the EOV, especially the ecological health index scoring gives him quite a good pointer to how to manage in the years to come. And I can also say that he overall scored so high that he can consider his farm as regenerative.
All right. Good point. There is a question in the chat that I'll just like to pose to, I guess, both of you. Do you experience any skepticism towards regenerative agriculture in Norway? And if so, why do you think that is?
Should I go first? Well,
absolutely.
There are always skepticism to everything that is new. That is very human. And usually the skepticism is from those who are not very acquainted with the contents of regenerative agriculture. So getting the time and the space to communicate the actual content is sort of the important job that we are doing. And I have not so far met anyone who cannot say that they think this is a reasonable approach to farming and fruit production. But in general, it's been amazing to see how many people who are interested, and not just from farmers, but also from farmers' organizations and food production and yeah, the whole food system basically. So it's nice to see that something that can unite instead of making polar opposites and yeah, conflict that we are used to have in the farming system.
Absolutely. I don't really have anything more to add.
I know that time is running, but I have one final question that I would like to ask you, and that's something that came up in the soil food web that I tried to follow, and it's a question where it's what if this is so great? This is an American question. If this is so great, why isn't regenerative agriculture everywhere? Or if you could just elaborate on what are the 3 main barriers, for instance, for a farmer to change into using your tools.
Well, the first barrier in any change is habit. It's very difficult to break through old habits, and it's not too uncommon that people go down with the ship instead of changing their ways in time. So that's one of the big issues, and a lot of what's it called, preconditions. People think a lot about what it is without having the knowledge. So and I think also farmers are very, from the farmer's perspective, they are very fed up with having new hallelujah solutions thrown down over them, and they have a quite resilient bullshit filter. So and that's why we have had prejudice. Thank you. So that's why we have had a focus on going from farm to farm without instead of going the route through politics. We have been going from farm to farm and talking with farmers and meeting them where they are, because this is the whole concept is meeting the farmers so that they can enhance whatever they are working with and their quality of life and their finances without getting anything new in. They start with what they have and then we develop it, just picking up some principles and practices that are enhancing the process. So it's very rewarding to see how it actually works out in the field.
Absolutely. I've seen farmers sitting on the fence for a long time, and it might also be a generation thing, that the old ones don't bother, and they soon quit anyway. And so it's the young ones, the new generation of farmers that are really taking to regenerative farming, and also new farmers that are new to farming. They doesn't have a baggage of prejudice either, and easier can grip what it is. Other than that, I agree with Anders. I have the same experience as he.
I'd just like to add in, it's the whole thing is that we are so focused on changing methodologies that it's hard to understand that we are not changing anything. We are developing what is there. So that's why it's working. We take whatever you are doing, whatever kind of production, whatever kind of circumstances, and we start with there and we improve. And that's the fastest way, not to get something externally in and just press play.
That's a new thing to farmers too. We have the tradition with forsøksringene that have become the NLR, but the farmers are really used to get advice from advisors and not think themselves, not experience themselves. So when we are pointing to that, you should do farming, manage your farm adaptively, using your feedback in a more adaptive way to try out new things. Many farmers are not used to that. Some farmers are, the 10% innovative farmers always do that, but most farmers are waiting to see if something better happens.
Okay, I think time is running up, and I would just like to say thank you so much, both of you. And I think I will just leave those words as you both share with us as concluding remarks, and also say that if there are more interest in this subject, there is a new session coming up right now at 2:00, which is Swedish Carbon Farmers Go Regenerative. To that point that you also said, Ulf, this is here you will also meet a new carbon farmer, which will give an enthusiastic talk about what she's doing in Sweden. So again, thank you to both of you, and thank you for the people listening, and have a nice afternoon. Goodbye.
Thank you too. Have a
Thank
nice
you.
evening.